soundness of Nigerian banks. Page 4 has details. Ambassadorial nominees fumble. Can't sing national anthem, recite pledge. That is on page 6 of the Nigerian pilot. And just below the picture story there, we see appeal court orders Ikpeazu remains Abia governor. Find details on page 6 as well. Now, the Authority newspaper is leading with alleged corruption. NAS members fight back. I rejected Obasanjo's 50 million naira bribe. Of course, that Senator Naala is still speaking up here. Executive initiated budget pardon, Senate spokesman. Find out all of the details on the front page of the Authority newspaper. Well, it is on the front page and continues on page 2. The Abuja-Kaduna commercial train service launched by President Buhari in Abuja yesterday. And above the masthead is another Justice Egbo emerges, and that is on page 33. Girl 18 sells own baby for 300,000 naira. Page 4 has details of that sad story. While we are conducting inconclusive elections, this will make for an interesting read. This statement is coming out of INEC on page 4 of the Authority newspaper. And below that picture there, we see economic crisis, speed up budget implementation. CBN tells federal government, right there on the front page. And the story continues on page 2. The Blueprint newspaper is leading with APC governors to wade into NAS crisis. Well, that is one of the stories on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper. And you find that story on page 6. Dogara Lasung orders smuggled billions into budget, and Jibrin still speaking up right there. It's all lies. We'll drag him to EFCC. Reps speaking up there on the front page, and that story continues on page 6 as well. And there we see President Muhammadu Buhari raising the flag to formally inaugurate the Abuja-Kaduna commercial rail transport service at Idu in Abuja yesterday. And of course, with him, Senate President Abubakar Bukola Saraki and Speaker, House of Representatives, Honorable Yakubu Dogara, and Minister of State for Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika, and Minister of Transportation, Mr. Rotimi Amechi, all of them right there at the launch, the formal inauguration of the Abuja-Kaduna commercial rail transport service. CBN raises monetary policy rate to 14%. We saw that story right on the front page of the Nigerian pilot earlier. I rejected Obasanjo's 50 million naira bribe for third term. Naala is still speaking up here. And Buhari flags of Abuja fast train. That is also a story complementing the picture right there on the front page of the paper. Kogi Speaker resigns. Imam takes over, and that is on page 15. Monarch 70 rapes 8-year-old girl in Jigawa State. You find details on page 7. And the National Mirror is leading with a completely different story right here. 1 dead, scores injured as militants invade Lagos. Find out why on the front page of the National Mirror newspaper, and that story continues on page 2. And just above the masthead is still a story coming out of CBN concerning the MPR, which was raised by CBN to 14% from 12% to tackle inflation and stabilize Naira. And that story you find on the front page and continues on page 2. Obasanjo calls for a merger of ministry, departments, and agencies to check wastage, and that is on page 5 of the National Mirror newspaper. And below the picture story there, federal government to link states by rail, and APC governors meet Buhari over NAS crisis. That is on page 6. Imprisonment won't stop corruption in Nigeria, and Reverend Kuka is picking up there on page 7. INEC postpones Rivers legislative rerun elections again. Page 11 has details, so you can find out why. And People's Daily is leading with states are now healthy, better funded, and that's according to governors. And you find out details, find out why the governors are reassuring Nigerians that states are now healthy and better funded on page 5 of People's Daily newspaper. And just below the masthead is we will link state capitals by rail. We saw that earlier on the national mirror, where the president is assuring Nigerians that states will be linked by rail. State capitals, I beg your pardon. And ambassadorial nominees fail national anthem test. Find out the perspectives of the People's Daily newspaper on this story. And Borno IDPs protest over poor feeding. And that story you find on page 3. And there's pics there. President Muhammadu Buhari signing document on the train with him, of course, Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, and Minister of State Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika, as President commissions flags of Abuja Kaduna Commercial Operation Rail Station at Idu Station in Abuja. This picture is the dominating picture today on the papers, and of course the story as well. CBN tilts monetary policy to tighten inflation. That is on the front page and continues on page 5. We're fed up with Obasanjo's sustained attacks. Senate leader is picking up there. That is now on page 17 as well. And it's been 834 days after the Chibok girls were abducted from their school. And the question now is, will the abducted Chibok schoolgirls ever be rescued? And the Daily Trust newspaper is leading again with APC governors wade into National Assembly crisis. That is on the front page, and it continues on page 5. And the story coming out of the CBN raises interest rate to 14% is also featured on the front page of Daily Trust, but you find the story on page 13. Senate screens 15 ambassadorial nominees. And below the picture is uranium radiation. Nuclear scientists arrive at Adamawa State. Find out what their visit is all about on page 6. Federal government to link state capitals with rails. This also is a trending story, and you find that on page 3 of the Daily Trust. 8 chieftains jostle for PDP chairmanship. 8 chieftains jostle for PDP chairmanship. Find out who the contenders are on page 40. Well, that's a wrap on newspaper review from this end. I'll hand you over to our Lagos studio, where Nkoli is standing by to take it up from here. Good morning, Nkoli.
Good morning, Salamatu, and thanks for joining us. Of course, I'm here, and I've got about 5 papers for review from the Lagos end, having similar stories from what you've reviewed this morning in Abuja. We'll begin with the Guardian newspaper, and boldly on its front page is cost of funds to rise as benchmark rate hits 14%. That's the biggest story on the front page of The Guardian this morning. And it's got some riders. CBN 6 speedy capital vote implementation. And then below that, we have a picture story. Here we have the Acting Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Idris, with the Director General of NIMASA, Dakuku Peter side. Minister of Transport, Chibika Amechi, also in that picture, Governor Nyesom Wike, and the Director General of the Department of State Service, Mr. Musa Daura. And that picture was taken after a meeting in Abuja on the roadmap to peace ahead of rerun elections in Rivers State yesterday. Just beside that picture story, we've got these ones. Buhari opens Abuja Kaduna rail line for service. You have OK's concessioning of Lagos, a Bado project, as a rider to that story. Amechi raises hope on Lagos Calabar rails. That's also a riding story to that story there. And then below that picture story, we've got these ones just close to the bottom page. Obasanjo, to the bottom of that page. Obasanjo seeks merger of MDAs in states with the rider. Senate leader faults graft allegation against NAS. Reps defend Dogara, wants EFCC to probe Jibrin. Okay, that's about all we have on the front page of The Guardian this morning. Then we move on to the Vanguard now, having this as its major headline story revealed. National Assembly padded 2016 budget with 481 billion, with the riders jacked up constituency projects vote by 40 billion. How Jibrin changed Buhari's 2016 budget, and that's credited to the reps themselves. And then by the side of that, we have a picture story making the front page there, but we'll look at some of the stories there. We will continue to declare elections inconclusive, INEC. Why is this coming out, and what exactly is INEC trying to say? Please check out page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper for all of the details. And further down that paper, you have ambassadorial nominees fail to recite national anthem. You have that on page 9. Appeal Court okays Ikpeazu as Abia governor till August 4. The story you can find on page 34 of the paper. Then quickly, let's go above the masthead of the Vanguard. We have this one. Criticism trails CBN's decision to hike MPR to 14%. Nigeria forest crisis, UK varsity eye other African countries. You can find that on page 8 for all of the details of that story. And away from the Vanguard, now we move on to the Punch newspaper. And boldly, the Punch is reporting this morning, APC governors meet Buhari, resolve to seek Ekwerimadu's removal. That's the biggest story, the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning. And it's got some riders. Okorocha justifies governors' Germany's vocational trip. If you're interested in that story, please pick up the Punch newspaper. Below that, we have a picture story. Here we have the wife of the governor of Ogun State, Mrs. Olufunsho Amosu, with a rescued 9-year-old boy, Korede Taiwo, who was chained by his father when she visited him at the Federal Medical Center, Ijaraba, in Abeokuta on Tuesday. Okay, so that boy is becoming a hero already. And then you have, by the side of that picture story, I rejected 50 million naira Obasanjo's third term bid bribe. Who's speaking? Nala. You can check out details of that on page 12. Rio Olympics, Mikel named Team Nigeria captain, is also a writing story to that story there. Then quickly above the masthead of the Punch newspaper, gunmen sack Lagos estate, shoot 3 policemen. Pages 4 and 5 have got details of that story, sad one in Lagos. CBN raises interest rate to 14%, warn banks. You have details of that economic story on page 23 of the Punch newspaper. And then we'll leave the Punch there and move on to the Nation newspaper, reporting this morning, boldly on its front page, refs seek EFCC's probe of Jibrin for budget padding. With the rider, ex-appropriation chair asks Dogara to clear name. Okay, we'll leave that major headline story and go below that. We have another headline story there. Okay, we even have a picture story there showing the president himself, President Muhammad Buhari, raising the flag of inauguration to inaugurate the Abuja-Kaduna commercial operation of Idu Station, Abuja. With him is the Minister of Transport, Rotimi Chibike Amici, and others. That picture was taken yesterday. Beside that picture story, we have other major headline stories. Uncertainty over ICPC's 37 case files on ex-governors. And then above the masthead of the Nation, as usual, the Nation is reporting this morning, APC governors to wade into National Assembly crisis. Above its masthead, you can find that on page 7 for all of the details. Or you're to pay 2 months' salary as workers end strike. Good news there for workers in Oyo State. You can check out details on page 9. And then we'll leave the Nation there and move on to the last paper for review from this end. That's the Nigerian Tribune, leading with Dogara fights back, accuses Jibrin of budget fraud. Details on page 6 of the Nigerian Tribune, with the riders. Warring refs drag EFCC into budget padding scandal. Executive, not Senate, padded budget. Senate spokesman insists. APC governors wading story going forth and back there. You can find out details when you pick up the Nigerian Tribune. And of course, there are several other stories which may not be able to bring you this morning, but they are all there, making the front page and some even in the belly of the papers. You can pick up these papers and read up all of the interesting stories for your information this morning. It's not over yet. Please don't go away because there's still more to come on Kakaki, the African Voice from our Abuja Center as I take you back to Salamatu in Abuja. Keep staying with us. My name is Nkoli Omoudu.